GM. We're here on Tuesday this week, special Tuesday edition of Lucky Trader Lounge. Today we're going to talk about what happened with Moonbirds and their silver nest, things that have been popping off this week. ETH is trending downward once again, so more of that on the show today. Welcome, Tyler. So today we didn't have the show yesterday, but we moved it to Tuesday this week to sort of talk about a little of what's going on, NFTs, what's up and coming. We have a couple different projects that are happening this week. There's some reveals from projects that came out last week. So what's your current state with NFTs right now over this past weekend into Tuesday?
It was a rough weekend. So I was away doing family stuff. It was my son's birthday this weekend. So it was a good weekend to be away because there was just nothing going on
Yeah.
in the NFT markets. But it's rough to come back, check in on these floors, and it's just red across the board. It was just 2 weeks ago. We were feeling bullish. The bullish tailwinds were coming. In my last week's weekly preview, I was talking about punks are back, art blocks is back. Like, we're going to run back summer 21. And man, how the narrative has shifted in just a week. Everything's down. ETH is down. It's kind of it's a rough spot in the market right now.
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to put it is some of these things have, there are some projects that have ran their course, so to speak. But yeah, it's kind of interesting with ETH being stable for a little bit, and then we saw it boom up to over 1,600 at one point recently last week, and now it's back into 1,300s. And I think the instability just always comes with a little instability in other markets because it generally trends with what's happening with Bitcoin and potentially what's happening in traditional markets as well. So I think that's bringing some caution to people right now, and they don't necessarily want to spend a ton on stuff. That one thing that you're seeing way more often these days, at least on like Twitter, is you see those bad flips, big high negative flips. There's all these like confession accounts now, and I think that is somewhat getting to people, and they don't want that happening to them. So spending a lot on some of these projects are a little harder for them.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think what's happening in the market just at a high level right now is there's a lot of caution to see with the macro environment and everything happening this week with some major tech earnings, with the FOMC and rate hikes coming tomorrow, and then GDP Thursday. I think everyone's just kind of on the sidelines and wants to let those play out and kind of see what's going to happen to crypto, what's going to happen to ETH, and then maybe make a play after that. So it feels like the money's here, just on the sidelines. But what that means for NFTs is there's no buys, there's no bids right now on anything. Because people are like, why do I need to buy right now? I can just wait this out. But then the people who want to sell, who want to get out, just keep undercutting the floors. And that's what we see now. Things are down 20, 30% on the week.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. We'll bring that up here. Well, this is coins right now, and as you can see, like outside of stables, pretty much all of them are red and trending downwards the last couple days here. Granted, we did get to some higher levels recently. Bitcoin was in 23,000 plus. It's now under 21,000. Ethereum sitting at around 1365 as of now. It had been sitting in generally that 1,500 range for most of last week. It was sitting around there. So that's sort of more of this macro play. And we saw yesterday, we don't have to get too deep into it, but there was the Coinbase news that I think originally came out like a week ago, and then it's kind of more mainstream now that they're going to be having an SEC probe but they're I don't I think they're planning on going pretty business as usual. Like their centralized exchange that they should get some sort of SEC checkups every now and then. So
Mhm.
I wasn't too concerned about that, but there has been just some news in general on things like that have been causing people to want to get out of centralized exchanges. We saw it with some of the other ones that recently have defaulted or just had issues on their own and stopped people from withdrawing. So um, that's pretty much like the macro point. Do you have anything else on sort of macro?
No, I think that the U.S. equity stocks are down a good
Hmm.
amount today as well. So it's hard to say if this ETH dip was tied to like the Coinbase news, other news, or if it's just in line with traditional markets. We talked about them maybe being decoupled a little bit a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
but it's not clear that trend has kept. So I think it's going to be turbulent this week until we get all the news out from the macro.
Yeah. So then let's look a little about some of the projects on this project rankings page. We see a few on here that are more recent. Most of them generally what we see week in, week out. But what's sort of your overall look at this project rankings page?
Yeah, there's a few takeaways. Mostly bad, a few good spots. So first, I think just the volume drop across the board. So Punks led the board last week with like 17,000 ETH traded. They had a couple massive sales up top, but even without those, they still did like 10,000 ETH. That totally dried up. I think there was a 24-hour period where there was no Punk sales this week. So overall volume is down 84%, and then their floor is down 17% on the week. It had run all the way up to 85. And granted, that was a huge run from 45 to 85. So, maybe a healthy pullback is kind of normal after a run like that, but now it's back below 70. So that's tough to see, in the PFPs kind of leading the market. The Yuga ecosystem, pretty similar story. Um, volumes down, floors are down. So the board ace, they were knocking on the door at 100 ETH floor. Now they're down to 86. The mutants are at 16.4. The other deeds are at 2.4. And I think for that ecosystem right now, the concern is like, what's the next catalyst? There's nothing on the calendar. We don't really have any events to look forward to. So, other than just a pure surprise announcement, everyone's just kind of treading water over there right now. I'm kind of unclear what's to come. And then, of course, this is one of the themes of the show: the Moonbirds oddities disappointment and the Silver Nest disappointment. Tanked that ecosystem, at least short term, and maybe the entire mid-tier PFP ecosystem with it. Who knows? So that was definitely another headline.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I think going into that Thursday show, we weren't really sure what we were going to get. They moved the spaces that they were going to talk about some things. Someone was telling me when's the last they do those spaces weekly, and they're like, when's the last time you came out one of those spaces like happy about what you heard? And I don't know, I think it's one of those things where, I mean, we've talked about before projects that it's almost like if you give too much information, if you're like too involved and doing things all the time, it's almost worse than these ones that are more secretive, have a lot of the unknown. You're not sure where it's going to go. So what's your thoughts on this Moonbird Silver Nest? Because it basically, the way I took it is the nesting rewards, the levels of nesting aren't that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's more if you're nesting by a certain time, like at this certain time that oddities came out, if you're nesting, you didn't have to have the bronze reward. I would expect the next one of these that they do, you will have to have silver reward. I'm not sure your thoughts on that, but I do think that there will be rewards for these down the road, but they don't want to give too much immediately because it's only silver. It's only the second level. If they truly want this to be a year-long project, then the stuff that you hold for years are going to be rewarded more than stuff that you hold for months. So that's sort of my thought on there. It's
Mhm.
almost like people expected way too much. People were going to expect too much, but now it like became a meme. What do you think about the silver nest?
Personally, I'm okay with how it played out, but it's hard to argue that the market was not pretty disappointed with it.
Um,
And I think everyone had just built up, the hype, like we're going to get Ravens or at least an announcement of Ravens. And there was really no news around it. And then, like the second nest in a row, the reward is, some merch like fanny pack. And I think those were essentially handed out at the NFT NYC event, right?
um,
So, like, people are just getting merch that they could have gotten at this party. And the team's going to come out and said that the nesting rewards are just supposed to be kind of a fun side thing. But that kind of raises the question for holders, so like, why are we even nesting? But then at the same time, everyone is terrified to lose out on Ravens if it does come as a stealth drop. And my current thesis is it now will become a stealth drop at a time that makes sense. And I think a part of why we didn't get much news is this is just not a good time in the market right now to really launch Companion. It's too soon. It's not really needed. The market probably wouldn't take it that well. I think Kevin and the team understand that. So that's probably why a part of it. And I mean, and you also made the point, they're trying to make this a multi-year project with long-term holders. And if you give too much too soon, then everyone's just going to dump it and move
and
on,
expect too
right?
much, and the next one, like, oh, they gave this for silver. Gold better be better because it's twice as long, and all that whole thing.
But man, I will say, I thought the price would dip. I thought we'd see some unnesting. I think it's fallen harder than I expected. It was kind of approaching 30 ETH floor ahead of Silver Nest. It's back down to 19 now, down 30% on the week. So that's a big drop. Definitely rough to see. It's kind of hard. Is that just a downward move in alignment with the rest of the mid-tier market, or are they kind of driving that mid-tier market down? So just quickly, Clone X, 8.88 down 18% on the week. Doodles at 10 down 16%. Azuki's at 9 down 20%. So that mid-tier range is all struggling, bleeding in a pretty terrible week. And I saw like a theory on Twitter the other day that at this point everyone kind of has their PFP.
Hmm.
They're not really looking to change, so there's just really like, so who are the buyers? Who are the buyers of these mid-tier sets? And it's a great question. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now, really across the entire NFT market for these existing projects, is who are the new buyers?
Yeah.
Because most people are standing pat with where they're at, or they're waiting on something to get back in. We don't really have that. So that's why we're kind of seeing this slow bleed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of these things that people already have. If you already are deep into, say, CloneX and that whole ecosystem, then why would you go and buy an Azuki now? Why would you go and buy something else in that range, like a Doodle or something like that? It's almost as if, yeah, you have your bags, you're sitting on them, you want to be a part of that project. And that goes back to when I've been saying, like, the 10,000 thing. I've always kind of thought was too many long term, just because of all these projects that pop up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard because as some of these dip, like say CloneX got to 5 Ethereum, would people that had been holding, say, a Cool Cat at 3 Ethereum try to find that as an upgrade? So, like, there might be certain levels of these where it hits that people who thought they never could have gotten into it and have seen that upside in the past might start to try and get in. So
Yeah.
that could be where some of these projects are getting towards. Uh, Sort of like a true floor to them. But yeah, it's kind of like that 8 to 12 range. we used to be talking to that as the 12 to 15 range,
Yeah.
and now that range has just sort of shifted down. And the 20 to 25 range is now 15 to 20. And some of these ranges are just sort of shifting, which I don't know, it could just be in general, like good for a lot of these projects, like a healthy pullback that we talk about a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next, say, month on all of these. Month of July was sort of front loaded with, oh, what's happening with the other side, what's happening with Moonbirds. And now, sort of to end the month, it's now trending a little towards where we at, who's going to do something. And maybe that's what happens in August, but we'll see. Like, I think a lot of the overall market is just generally down. And with that, people mentally, it's hard to see upside on some of those things, as it was like a year ago. A year ago in August was a pretty crazy month. Like, are people going to try to repeat that anytime soon? Can we? But I think Meme Land is one, after seeing the success of potatoes. Like, Meme Land seems like one that once that comes out fully, we could see people who are off on the sidelines getting back in for something like that, because it looks to be a clear winner. It might be difficult in this sort of market, but even with the potatoes, which, I mean, there wasn't anything super special with them, and they're still holding above a 0.6 floor. Like, they turned into a plant that's one of these, whatever it is, 12 colors, and most of them just look pretty much the same. So, what's your thoughts on the potatoes in this project?
Yeah, so I've been loosely following Meme Land for a while. I didn't really dive in as much until the past week. So, first off, for those who aren't aware, go check out their website. So, the founder 9gag has a tremendous following, global audience of 200 million. He's backed by some major names here. You can see all those on the website, and the main project is going to be these Meme Land Captains, which is 10K PFP set with utility. They're going to have tokenomics, the meme token, all of that. Potatoes is the first drop. But I think what really kind of caught my attention was their advisors and investors. And I don't know if we talked about this on the show Thursday or not, Lou. I'm kind of forgetting. But, it's an all-star list of kind of the who's who of NFT and just general investors. So from the NFT space, Kevin Rose, Gary V, Mulligan from Prement, and then just from like the broader world, the Vol from AngelList, Tim Ferriss. Like, you don't really see those guys on too many NFT product investor rosters. So that definitely caught my attention, and so that was kind of one of the drivers of some of my early personal buys on the potatoes project. And then the reveal happened. I was pretty happy with the reveal. And we can go into the rarity a bit down the line. And then the price action was pretty solid for most of the weekend. It seemed like a lot of whales and sharp traders were getting into the project as well. So I think there was a lot of good signs early on. The floor got all the way to like mid 0.9s. It's now back to, kind of 0.6, 0.7 range. I think one thing that's been really interesting is the rarity. So there's been some real rare in this project. So I think the highest sales already, 18 ETH for a Cosmic, 16. We see 12 ETH. So there's been 4 double-digit sales. They tweeted on the 24th, will the current rarity of the potatoes change? Yes. Type is just one of the traits. It's like fur, body, or skin. More traits are going to be revealed. So I think that was interesting. I don't think it necessarily is going to discount that top end.
Yeah, you still have that one trait is still rare.
Right. So you still have a cosmic potato. Mm-hmm. But what that does give hope to is everyone who's on the floor right now. Right. Like you could get a rare trait in the next reveal. So I thought that was pretty smart. And one interesting thing about this product is they basically are doing potatoes as a test run for their captain's project. So they said there's no way, we know we're going to make mistakes. There's no way to have a perfect launch. So we're going to try to work out all the kinks with potatoes, and see how the market responds to different things and try and experiment. I think that's pretty brilliant, really. Um, so I'm kind of curious to see what's to come. They also just announced there's a big feature dropping next week. I think some people think it's staking. I mean, at the high level, folks, the speculation is that potatoes are going to get you on the allow list for the meme line captains. So that hasn't been confirmed. They've been kind of dancing around it. But I think that's the primary utility most folks are looking for.
Yeah, and 9gag is a pretty massive website and background in memes, so they're really taking the meme theme, so to speak, to it. They also announced with that one there with Adrian Chang as one of the advisors. So yeah, it definitely seems like they have a good team around them and are connecting with a lot of the big names in the space on the Web 2 and Web 3 side. So I do think this is sort of the one people just keep talking about. Oh, we need like a good project. There's all these like whatevers, but this is probably the one. And potatoes is the first way to get involved. Like there's people that think you might need a potato in order to get onto the next whitelist. And it seems like that's also what's keeping the floor up in a way. So yeah, I like the idea of getting into the ecosystem this way. And like you said, you could pick up a floor one now, and luckily enough, the next time it evolves, you get something that's a lot rarer and it adds to it, and then all of a sudden you just picked up a floor that's not actually a floor. So that's a cool part with it, like the multiple rare lotto. We've seen that a couple different projects. I don't know any that were necessarily this level of hype to it that we've seen it this way. So definitely one to watch. I think Memeland and all of their millions of eyeballs on them is definitely going to be one that we'll be talking about again for probably the next month at least. So cool. And then are there any others on this list of note?
Maybe just quickly on Isekai, Meta, or ICK, however you want to say it. So I think what's interesting about that project is kind of how the price action evolved over the weekend. So at one point, like, it was kind of chopping in that like 0.3 range. So they're kind of just barely above the public sale mint. And then Dingaling came in and swept. I think he swept a good amount. And then there was some whales who kind of got on board afterwards. There was just huge sweeps. Some of the biggest sweep action we've seen on this project happened over the weekend. And the floor got all the way past 0.6. Now we see it's back 0.37, 0.38 here pre-reveal. And I think that's kind of a telling sign of what's happening, especially in the low cap sector right now. Is there's always alpha groups, the folks who are just kind of playing on the low end. If they see any big names enter a project, it's definitely a buy signal. But then everyone's attention span is also so short right now. They're just looking for a quick return and a dump. So like this is kind of a key example. If anyone fast followed Ding on this, they were able to get in at a lower entry price. Several other like whales came in and swept later, and then some of those people probably tried to dump their tokens already. So we're in these just fast forwarded hyperspeed cycles right now, where no one wants to hold anything for more than hours, let alone days, on the low end. And like all these products are just struggling to really maintain any momentum or price action, it seems. And Isekai is really no different.
Yeah, I definitely think that you kind of nailed it there. And from the previews that I saw from this collection, like I didn't really expect them to get too high. It kind of reminds me a little of Boki. It's probably a little better artwork wise, and I think rarity wise, they'll be a little different. But at the same time, like they haven't revealed, and people just have such short attention spans, and all you've seen are the previews. That it's a little harder with some of these. The other one's Mystics that hasn't revealed yet either. And some of these, like they get up initially and then if they haven't revealed in a few days, people kind of forget about them, want the liquidity back into the next thing. And it almost doesn't matter how cool they look or how they came out. So what do you think about this one with the Mystics?
I think you're just spot on with, that's the trend right now. Like you have to have a plan, you have to have announcements, you have to have spaces, you have to have reveals all in the first 24 hours. And if you don't, everyone's just going to dump your project and move on. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, that's just kind of the sign of the times. There's just not enough liquidity. Like that's the bottom line. There's not enough liquidity to support all of these new products every day. So it's really just a handful of groups of alpha group traders who are trading all these, propping them up, and then moving on to the next one is kind of how it feels like this market is going right now, which isn't really that much fun. But I will say, I mean, there were some winners last week. So just quickly, if we go through the board, like Ether Jump was the big one. So we talked about them. You could have gotten Ether Jump for 0.03, 0.04. It went all the way to 0.2 and kind of held there. I think it made a couple of runs to 0.2 during last week before kind of falling back this week. So that was one. Casual Sloths was one you could have gotten in at 0.04. It ran all the way to 0.3 at one point. So that's another one that was a 7 or 8x. We talked about Nickelodeon. If anyone got in on Nickelodeon on primary, that was $50. It got all the way to, I think, 0.3, 0.4 ETH at peak. So there were still multiple, in this terrible bear market, there were multiple 5 to 10x opportunities, which I think is why it's at least keeping people's attention and in the market. Because, I mean, in the whole cryptocurrency space right now, like are there any other opportunities to hit 4 or 5x multiples in 8 to 12 hours? And of course, it feels like a casino, and gambling is absolutely kind of a part of what's going on with these. But there were some success stories, and I think that will lead into this week that we'll see some continued action on the free mints, lower cost, paid mint space just because of last week's success.
Yeah. And, Gravity's talking about the Ether Jump. That one's another one that started kind of hot. And it revealed, I mean, they're pretty basic and people expect them to be basic. I feel like that's what some of this, like the ones that do well, partially if you have this sort of pixel art that's simpler, you know what you're getting going into, versus the ones that people talk about, oh, the art is so dope, and then overhype the art with it. Like we saw it with something like PXN, where people just overhype the art. So maybe that's why some of these that are simpler just end up working out. Like there was the sloths over the weekend did well. Casual sloths, they somewhat of a cute narrative to it, I guess, but very simple. And then they had this they started growing the pox, and people weren't sure what that was all about. And there was, I believe it was free mint, but it had a couple different dynamics that were new. Some of the projects now are coming out with trying to do different dynamics to the mint to avoid bots. There was that one with office hours that had like a bot counter on it. And it's just people are trying to do other things to get some sort of attention, because just the old playbook isn't really working the same as it once did. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, let's get a little into some of the others. I see you have the CryptoPunks up there, and then what did you want to talk about with CryptoPunks?
Oh, I just wanted to show just the floor in general, back down to 70 from 85, just kind of hallmark, one of the big stories of the week. So again, I don't think anyone's overly concerned, just kind of sign of the market, but it'll be interesting if kind of punks become a leading indicator for the rest of the market. Like I'd say they kind of were for the last month. I'm curious if that will continue or if this was just kind of a 1 month trajectory, but I feel like punks are still back. They're just in a bit of a dip right now.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you saw, but there was a little tweet thread on that large ape sale earlier and sort of giving reasons behind it. And it's funny some of the takes that people have had on it. Like they'd rather have a an ape punk versus an ape. And it's kind of interesting, but yeah, people have been around for a while kind of have this take that they just would rather have the punks because they know if NFTs are here long term, then punks kind of have to be. Um,
Right.
and Bored Apes could go plenty different routes in order to be a little different. So yeah, I think it's interesting because most of these top sales are from the apes, and it seems like people are somewhat more attracted to them and the style of them in this punk style as one of the more aesthetically pleasing of these pixel forms. So I think that's part of it. But let's go switch back into some of the other stuff that's been happening this week. And Ledger had their market pass. The Genesis came out this week and has done really well. It was a point 0.3 ETH mint, and it had been sitting around, like, I think it might have hit 0.7 yesterday. It's been around 0.6, and then they finished it out with the wait list earlier today, and now they've minted all 10,000 of these, and it has a pretty good ratio of holders, and sitting at around 0.5 ETH. So, what's your thoughts on this, the Ledger Pass?
Yeah, and this was an interesting one. Definitely happy to see the success. 10,000 NFTs at 0.3, man. That's a big raise, 3,000 ETH.
Yeah.
Not too many brands, I think, could really even pull that off so successfully right now. So I think that definitely kind of goes to reinforce Ledger and their impact on the market. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what's to come. So it seems like they intend to launch their own platform, which their vision is to be the most secure NFT trading platform out there, which of course I think we all need and look forward to, where they're going to have their own artists and brands releasing NFTs. So I think that'll be definitely interesting. That's kind of like the hallmark, of this overall project and their vision. And as Genesis Pass holders, assuming you'll have early access to drops or potentially airdrops, and then you also get, I think you get a free Nano X as well as first access to some of their other hardware that might be coming out. So that's kind of the utility that comes along with it. Certainly, this access pass is the one of the hottest new trends. I don't think it's slowing down. I think we're going to continue to see them, and they're probably one of the best performing NFT asset classes of the last quarter. I'd say is some of these access passes, and it feels like it's an investment you can make that's going to continue potentially paying off, as time passes, as more drops come. So in a lot of ways, it feels a little bit safer than putting your funds into PFP, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, where there's a lot of uncertainty, and it may just drop, another 30 to 50%. So I think that's some of the upside that people are looking at. And 2,000 ETH already, it just launched yesterday, so that's some solid price action here in the first 24, 28 hours. And Ryan Carson's fund swept, so that has to be a sign of something.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting because he swept at, I think, 0.65, and it's basically just gone down since. Like, is Ryan Carson the new Steve Aoki? Like, when he goes in to buy, then everything crashes from there. It's trending that way. I did see Steve Aoki has some avatars on Sandbox that are like 0.15 floor that came out this week too. But yeah, this Ryan Carson thing is kind of been funny as of late, and I think there's a lot of people that are against him. But did you see he dropped the fees on his fund? It went from like 70K a quarter to 10K a quarter, I think is what the numbers were. But yeah, it dropped like to 1/6 of what he was previously asking. And I think part of that is the market for sure, but you wonder how many people are backing out of it. It seems like he's making things very clear that what he's doing, I don't know, the way that certain people trade NFTs versus how he's doing it, I think a lot of people will clash with his methodology. But have you listened to any of these podcasts that he's had? Because as he mentioned here, like he's had over 5,000 viewers. I think he's had 3 episodes now. He just did one with non-fungible film. But have you listened to any of those, or do you have any takes on it?
I haven't, and I want to, and I probably need to reserve my all of my opinions until I've kind of listened to him speak. But I mean, I think he's shown a comedy of errors already just in the last few months. I mean, one, he listed a bundle of oddities. I think what was it, 5 or 8 at the floor price of 3. I mean, a person running an NFT fund like that is an incredibly basic mistake. Like that is inexcusable, and that was just that was just his personal assets. But still,
Yeah.
that's a sign of his savviness and how to operate on OpenSea and in the NFT space. And then he continues to run these sweeps, and people keep pushing back or commenting or just kind of like laughing at him, like this is a terrible way for you to be entering your investments into these projects. And I think I don't know if he's really provided a rationale for why he continues to sweep. Maybe he thinks people are going to chase after him, and thus, he needs to make all his buys at once. But the reality of it, and whenever you see these big sweeps right now in this market with such little buy pressure, the floor just fills back in slowly. So today he bought 87 ledgers. A better way to do that would be 10 sweeps of 8 or 4 sweeps of 20, spread out across time to like let the floor price settle. So I don't know, not a big fan of his trading strategy, but it's also kind of like the car crash that you can't turn away from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna continue to watch. I've got notifications on for this guy, so I don't want to miss a thing.
Yeah, and I have a couple takes on the sweeps. I do think that there is some strategy to it where you go on and you sweep because people watch Gembot, and it's somewhat of marketing. So he sweeps, people talk about it, but you don't need to sweep 87. You only need to sweep 15 to come up on that. So it's one thing if he's sweeping them and then trying to sell them a little higher. Like, why not sweep 15? Then when it pulls back, you sweep again 15. 87 just seems like a weird number. Like, where did that number come from? How are you deciding how to do these things? And I think he's doing it somewhat as a marketing scheme, where
Sure.
it's like, oh, look what we did. We're buying this one. This is something that, as he mentions here, like I've met with the CEO. I like what they're doing, like their vision. And I do think doing the sweep first before putting this message out makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
However, as you mentioned, like if he bought 15 of those at 0.6, then right now he could have bought another 50 of them and saved him and his fund, 5 Ethereum or however much ends up being. So I think over time, over the long run, it's not the most efficient way to do it.
Right.
But maybe it's just like a less transactions thing. If you're like, oh, I swept these all at once versus doing them one by one, then when is he planning on selling these? I think I would guess like he's holding them for a little bit. It's not like he's selling them, but at what point would you take a loss on them? We saw he just at basically on a dime started selling off his own collection because he's like, oh, I'm going to be starting the fund in 2 weeks. So I have to get rid of all my things. And he was just taking a loss on everything. So you wonder at what point is he going to have to potentially get liquid and sell off some of these things. I think the war chest is pretty large for now, but yeah, it'll definitely be something to watch for here in the future.
Absolutely.
So let's go back into some upcoming stuff with Artblocks. And they have a drop tomorrow. It's 500 count, the second of Series 8 here. And this one's starting at a pretty high number with 10 ETH and dropping exponentially down to 0.2. I'm not sure the take on this one. Would love to get your take on it, because I think after this last Art Blocks week, it seems like attention has moved off of it again. And the Running Moon was pretty successful. And then now we have this one, which, if you've been following, like, as far as curateds go, curated still are doing decently, but they have always somewhat been hit or miss, like one versus another. So what's your thoughts on this one, Fahad Karim, and this one that's coming tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Before we dive into it specifically, let's maybe recap the market a little bit. So the last curated drop, Running Moon, it was incredibly profitable for like the first 4 to 8 hours. So it minted out pretty much at the gun at a 3 ETH Dutch auction, basically between 2.7 and 3. I'd say the average buyer probably paid 2.85 to 2.9. We saw it run to like 4.6 or so on the secondary, with some solid sales in the 6 to 7 ETH range. And then it retraced. It kind of was battling between 3 and 3.5 for a few days. And then as the time has progressed, it's gone into the low 2. So it sits around 2.2 right now. It's kind of sat there for the last week or so. So about, what is that, 30% below mint or so, even more if you subtract the 10% transaction fees. So anyone who held that is now underwater. There's the overall liquidity in Artblocks is down quite a bit. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I watched the sales bot for that, Discord all day, every day. I can just tell you anecdotally, it's down pretty substantially. The last 3 to 5 mints, I feel the feeling is they minted out a little bit too high because of extra flippers and traders who are at the table now. And then everyone's looking to dump immediately after. Listings are super high, and then the floor goes below the mint. That's been the story, I think, of the last 3 straight, even though Squares had a nice run over the weekend. So that one kind of bounced back and was an exception. So I don't know. It's kind of tricky. Like, will the new traders and flippers who've shown up now, are they going to have the patience to stick through this one? My gut is yes, but it's going to be a little bit less hyped maybe than the last one. I think the Dutch auction mechanic is probably good for investors and traders, bad for the artist. At 3 ETH, really no one had a choice. Like the Dutch auction didn't have a chance to play out, really. And, people had already made up their minds that they were going to fire at the gun, and it sold out pretty much right away. Well, now we'll have a chance to hold the line, so to speak. It's going to be 10 minutes from 10 ETH to 5 ETH. I think this one's going to go lower than Running Moon. My gut is probably in the 1.5 to 2.5 range. It's going to go. That's a fairly large range. Personally hoping it's like 1.5 to 2. If it goes there, I think it's going to be really successful. Let's take a look at the art. I'm very curious, how he's going to do the rarities. But the overall concept is kind of cityscapes with a lot of allusions to different cities or ancient Egypt. And we'll see that in some of the styles. And he's previewed the 8 different types of images here. There's Ancient City, Crowd City, Icescape, Maze, Ocean Towers, Pencil City, Rooftops, and Upside Down. So there's 8 different types, and he's got an example of each of these. They're all very different, but I think this is going to have a good amount of mainstream appeal. The iconic cityscape project we have so far is Ecumenopolis, which ran to a 20th floor. It's a lot of traders or Artblocks folks' favorite projects. And then there's the most minimal one is this water towers. You can see it here where it's significantly different from the other previews. And then the Upside Down is the only one where of course, the art is flipped. So if he has, a small rarity set on these last two, I could definitely see those commanding a decent premium.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think the rare load in general pulls up the floor on these art blocks projects. So
Yeah.
I think that could be a big factor to watch as this plays out
Yeah.
tomorrow. And then
And
of
I know
course
when
500
they reveal, generally people look for black and white. So it'll be interesting on this one. As far as like I'm trying to think, have there been many that are mostly black and white, and then it's like the reverse where if they have color to them, then they become the rare ones?
That's a good question.
Because I know there's some that had like inverted and
Right.
things like that.
Sifa just had the inverted.
Yeah,
Um, Man, this one doesn't seem to have too many colors. Like it seems to be, pretty much
which might be
black,
better.
white, and tan.
Fit
So
their own style to it.
it seems like colors won't necessarily be playing into the rarity as much. It seems it's going to be more of like the style,
Yeah.
which it won't be quite as obvious either. Visually as you scan through the set, until you kind of figure out, right, what each of these 8 typically look like. So I don't know. I'm excited for this one. As always, it's going to be dependent on the mint price. If this is going to be a good investment or trade or not. But I don't know. I like this one, and I think it could have some legs and be, a solid set. This is not going to be a floor set curated, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely excited for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is one to watch because as just in general what the market's been doing as of late, maybe this is something that people focus on. The 500 count is higher than we've seen some of them recently, so that one will be a reason to watch as well. Interestingly enough, the ones that have done well, Running Moon was 460. Does that sound right? I think Running Moon was less, but yeah, these used to be 1,000-piece collections, and now they're coming around this 500, which I think has benefited them in a lot. Kick here. Wanted to talk a little about this Damien Hirst currency because tomorrow is uh, your decision has to be made basically today, and do you want to burn it and you get the physical, or do you want to keep the NFT? And I think this is a really interesting discussion because long term, like the value of physical art as it stands right now, and Damien Hirst, one of the wealthiest of physical artists in the world currently, and I think you're seeing this as his first NFT collection, so that'll hold plenty of value if you believe NFTs are going to be the future of art, digital art. Then that's one take that you can go off of. The other side of it is they basically all look the same. And are you going to pay? Now it's up to 6.5 Ethereum floor. Also, fair warning, this is only about a third of the collection on OpenSea. There's still a bunch that are on Palm. About 4,300 is the last number that I saw had been burned. So, what's your thoughts here? Because the idea of burning for a physical printed with the signature from Damien Hirst has a lot of value to it, and it's sort of easier to explain to people when you have that in your wall, because anyone could arguably just print out a picture from their their currency NFT and hang it on their wall. It just wouldn't be signed. So how much value are you then putting to the signature itself? So what's your thoughts on this sort of dynamic? Because there's not many NFTs that have been doing it this way, but I feel like this is a great way for artists, the traditional artists, to get into NFTs and give people that decision.
Yeah, I think it's smart, and it's been interesting to see the numbers play out. And I think it's crazy that it's going to end up being almost 50-50.
Yeah.
right? And I feel like certainly anyone who had two or any even multiple is, of course, I think going to do that split. I think another driver is just our display tech is still not there. It's still so bad and lagging behind the digital art sector in general that like if you want to hang a currency, on your wall right now, you probably want the physical, right? Like I don't know of a good method, with good display frame tech right now to display something like this. So I think that's been driving the price action and the burn numbers that we've seen a bit. I saw an interesting take that I think someone was saying that Christie's is valuing these at 15,000 each, and just last week they were trading at like 5.5, which is kind of right around 7,500 USD. So
Mm-hmm.
they're basically saying they're half the price of what this auction house is valuing these at, and I think that is starting to get out a little bit. So I think we've seen the floor jump about an ETH since then. Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens immediately afterward, right? Because there will be no buy pressure for those who want to burn. That option will be removed essentially, but now we'll have a fixed supply of the digital assets, um, which will be the smallest it's ever been.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like this project a lot. It's on my list of ones to acquire. I don't have one yet, but definitely want to have one someday.
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces to this that are pretty interesting to me. The benefits to the NFT is liquidity, but then this is only showing 2,000 on OpenSea and Ethereum, which is the more liquid of the markets, which means a lot of people are thinking, oh, the supply is going down, supply is going down. It is, but at the same time, the OpenSea supply is going up, and it could 3x in supply from here, and the NFTs. Um, in that sense, which is kind of like a weird dynamic to it. But then I think I'd also prefer to burn and have the physical because we know Damien Hirst he's already pretty much set a legacy for his name and his artwork, and something like Christie's is going to value that more than just this open market who for the most part, a lot of people that buy into NFTs don't know much about art and who the artist is and background and stuff like that, where someone like Christie's, the traditional auction houses, can really prop up like what his previous stuff is and what he's done in the past. But then you wonder, like, there's 4,500 of those physicals that look pretty much the same. Is that going to devalue each other? So this has always been sort of a really interesting project to me. The fact that they all look so much alike as well. I think there's tiny differences between them, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
um, number of blue dots versus red dots and things like that. Like you can't really tell easily with the naked eye, but they do have some differences, um, one to the other. So this has always been one that's interesting to me. So it's cool to see that they're finally getting to their burn date. Um, it's been around for what, like 9 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
So people have been waiting for this day for a little while, and we've seen it pick up a little bit of extra volume these last few days as people are finding out it's the final week to be doing it. So um, yeah, and Gravity is saying the number one trait is title length. So based on what people name them as, and if you name them as certain things, that also is creating some premium. So
Yeah, when we see Then She's Dead just sold an hour ago for 9 ETH when the floor
yeah,
is 6.6. So clearly that titling matters. So
yeah.
that is wild to see. And then back in Peak Art Mania, hit that 20 floor August 30th.
It was crazy during that time. It was like it was like its own blue chip. People couldn't even figure out how to sell them, how to get them off Palm or selling them on Palm. That was the whole thing. I remember, but yeah, this just so people know, like this is something that's going to be happening tomorrow. Um, and yeah, is there anything else on this week that we haven't touched on that you're looking forward to?
A few things which can impact the market. So the Goblintown baiting is coming. I
Mhm.
think what's interesting about this is so you have to have a goblin and the McGoblin burger, and then you're going to have to effectively burn both.
Just the burger gets burned,
Okay.
but you have to have both.
All right. So then I misunderstood how it was going to work, but still a
You could
fairly
you could have one. I think you can have one goblin and multiple burgers, and that one goblin counts towards them. I don't think you have to have like two and two.
okay.
But yeah, I believe the burgers are burnt. The more that you burn through this baiting tactic, the better reward you can get. I think they're saying like an okay thing. Yeah, so like if you have two, it's a little better. If you have three, it's a little better. It's just kind of like the M1, M2, M3 idea to it, except you're
Hmm.
burning multiple. And then that hot dog one, I think that's one of the rare uh in the burger collection. There's only like 20 of them or something that are hot dogs. That's going to get you a cooler one. So like the way that they're doing it, like it makes a decent amount of sense for like if you effectively spend more, you can get a rarer version of it. But what do you think? Because the Goblin ecosystem has been somewhat up and down pretty much its whole time, but,
Hmm.
the burgers themselves got very close in price to, the Goblin, as those are the ones that seem to have more utility right now. They're 1.5 and a Goblin's at 2.5. So
And I
it's
think
almost too close.
yeah, and they've separated a little bit. I think this morning when I checked, it was like 2.8, 1.4. So the Goblins are pulling away, but both fours are up about 7 to 10% on the week. So clearly or since this announcement, so some positive price action. Um, a few thoughts. Man, I wish they could just tweet in like normal script and I could just read, what
Yeah.
this is. I know that's a part of the whole lore and the
For
mystery and
a
whatnot.
big announcement like this, you'd hope now that they're, like, out and somewhat doxed, yeah, I feel like these things that are, like, pretty important details to know because when we were reading it, like, I mean, as you said, like, when you read it first, it was hard to really tell, but it did seem like you were burning goblins. But then I guess in the goblin contract, there's not a burn function, but there is in the burger contract. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And then I think the other one is just kind of stepping back. It's just, you know, how quickly this product is kind of being forced to act to stay relevant, right? So now they're about to drop their third set in some capacity, right? They started with
Mhm.
the goblins, took over, NFT space, ran the 90th floor. That was what a few weeks before NFT NYC, so it really just came out in June, early June. Now we're into July. They're going to drop their third set already in less than 2 months, and then it kind of brings in that whole concept of diminishing returns. Like, what are they going to be able to do, from here, right? Like, are they going to launch a fourth project in August? So, how are they going to, build off this? But it is interesting. And for those in this ecosystem, definitely, really important event to watch. It's kind of the theme of this week. We have a few projects who aren't dropping new NFTs, but are at least dropping some kind of a feature that's going to impact. So the Chimpers are releasing a dojo, which is going to be essentially staking. And there's different things you can do in the dojo once you're staked. They have a whole blog post, so go read about it if you're in the Chimpers and want to learn more. You can do training, battling, adventuring. You're going to earn these bandanas and experience points. Um, and I don't know. Oh, and this will update your metadata. I don't really know exactly what other kind of value you'll get, but this will likely take some supply off the market, which can always have some potential impact. So that one's going to be interesting to watch. And then the on-chain monkeys are doing similar as well with their missions for the karma set. Any NFT that doesn't get transferred for 45 days completes their mission successfully and will get a prize of some kind. So another part is kind of incentivizing not selling or moving. So we'll see what kind of success they have, but definitely, some mechanics to be aware of if you're in these projects.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the Chimpers, their site is pretty cool. This dojo site, I went on it earlier. I think you have to be a holder to really interact with it fully, but yeah, I agree that like some of these lower tier projects are working on stuff, and people are just so focused on like, oh, Moonbirds gave a fanny pack, and they're not focusing on projects that are doing stuff. It's kind of weird. It's just like the weird state of NFTs right now, where like the stuff that is giving you bang for your buck is getting like brushed to the side, and the stuff that is like overhyped, it just gets voted to the ground. So um it's kind of funny like looking at some of these things, even like the goblin thing. Like I feel like there's some FUD around it, and now goblins have been trending downward for the past couple weeks when they were in the fours. And they've made it somewhat clear that burgers are a utility right now, and it's like people are getting away from the OG set in that sense. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with those, with the baiting. Um, if you have burgers and don't use them, they've alluded to there's going to be something else in the future that you'll be able to use them for. So giving value to the secondary set seems to be a theme right now, and having to do that in order to keep them going, kind of like oddities are down in the low ones right now. Beans are low. Like a lot of these secondary projects, the pets for cool cats are like 0.2. So there's supposedly something, yeah, with cool cats on which day is that?
Friday. Yeah.
Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Look for more details on an announcement with the cool cats. Generally, that's in line with their town hall, so it might be a good town hall to sit in with. But there's some cool little different characters that they have here. Some of them are cat-like. There's I want to say there's like a rhinoceros there, a bird. I think that's supposed to be like a penguin. It just seemed like they do have some different animals, and they have alluded to that in the past, where they're going to have other creatures from the mind of Klon. Forget how they worded it before, but it does seem like they're going to be having some sort of announcement on Friday, and potentially more information on whether it's expanding their ecosystem or combining into another ecosystem, something with like the Coolverse. So, do you have any thoughts on what you think this Cool Cats announcement? I mean,
Yeah, clearly not surprised. I've been playing on this for a while, so I get that. It's a part of their longer term vision. But now the question is, how are they going to drop it? Like, they can't do a paid mint, right? It's because, the cool pets are at 0.2.
yeah.
So, if they do one, if it's a free mint or like zero, if it's less than 0.05, it could probably mint out, 0.01 or 02, for sure it mints out. Above 05, I'm not sure it does. But, the art looks interesting. And, it's always good to see, they're kind of pivoting from the game a little bit more into this ecosystem universe. So that'll be interesting to see. So that wasn't even on my radar when I wrote my weekly post. So it just broke here in the last few hours. Just rapid fire, 4 of the most hyped paid or free mints this week to watch for those who are in the low cap sector. The Tomoverse on the 27th, Identities and Universe on the 28th, and then Asian on July 29th. It has the highest price, but also the highest followers on Twitter. So I won't cover those in detail, but go ahead and check out the post if you want to learn more on those. As we said earlier in the show, there were some big winners last week. So there's a chance we'll see that repeat this week. So it might be worth checking out.
Yeah, I agree. And just as a reminder, Tyler does this article every week. So if you're interested in what is potentially going to be happening on a given week, make sure to check that out on luckytrader.com. And yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back in a couple days here to potentially talk about some different things that from today. Maybe our blocks went well. Maybe we get more information on the goblin stuff. Maybe we get more information on cool cat stuff. So make sure to join us again when we come back on Thursday. And thanks for watching. We will catch you guys next time.